Hello, hello. I'm just never done live before, so I've got 2 minutes, but I just thought I'd start it a bit early, just in case I mess up. How's everyone doing? All right, let me get Josh in here. Josh. Sorry, we're just waiting for people to join. We've got Josh joining us in a second. Oh, there he is,
Hello.
Josh. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Let's just give people a few minutes to join.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Not too much. Had a bit of a COVID scare this morning, to be honest, but
Oh, really?
it's all good. Test negative, so. But yeah, not too much. I've just been. The weather's quite bad in Glasgow again. Yeah, not too
Yeah,
much.
we've been like up and down here in London. It's kind of warm. Now it's kind of rainy again.
Was it not like 30 degrees last week or something?
30 degrees. I mean, kind of. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it wasn't far. It was like 27, 28 degrees.
That's crazy. I'm
This is pretty
jealous.
crazy. And 27, 28 degrees in London feels so warm.
Yeah,
It's almost like it was impossible to sleep. Yeah, it was
I
horrible.
imagine.
Anyways, so we've got people joining slowly here.
Oh, cool.
I don't know how long we should wait to. I guess people can just kind of join in as we go. It's 7 now. We've got 16 viewers. Alex is here. Hi, Alex. Got Laura, Jesse. All right, might as well make a start.
Yeah, cool. Go for it.
So hi everyone. I'm Lucas, one of the members of Revolv Collective. I haven't actually done one of these live events yet, so this is my first one. And we're going to be talking to Josh Croll today, who just graduated from Glasgow. It's Glasgow School of Design, right? Not Glasgow School of Art.
No, so it's the Glasgow School of Art, but it's the school that
Glasgow
you
School of Art.
graduated
Right.
from.
So
Yeah,
it's Glasgow School of Art, and then within the Glasgow School of Art, there's the Glasgow School of Design,
yeah,
which is
School of
like the
Design.
photography sector. Got you.
Well, kind of.
Um,
There's fine art photography, which is in the School of Fine Art, and I'm from
okay.
communication design, so it's kind of a weird one. It's mainly a design course, but we specialize in photography as well. So
Sure. I mean, it's a bit like LCC. We had, I mean, UAL. I
mm,
was sort of like in the communication side of it, but there was also fine art photography. It was all a bit complicated. But
yeah,
anyways, so Josh and I have talked before just yesterday, and we've got tons of interesting stuff to talk about with some of his most recent work that he graduated with. I've just been quite interested by his work since I've seen it, because of the way that he sort of visualizes social and political issues. And I think you'll see how that comes through in a really interesting way in his work. So one thing I did want to say though is we were discussing with Josh how weird it is to have a sort of live event like this, talking about photography, and none of you being able to see the work that we're talking about. So what I'm going to do, I think I can pin a comment here. I'm going to pin his showcase page, so that you can see what we're talking about. So it's GSA showcase .net slash Josh Croll. Okay. So I've done that. And then see if I can pin that. Yeah, pin comment. All right.
Cool, nice one.
So if anyone wants to follow along with what we're talking about sort of visually, go to that link. And yeah. Cool. So I thought we might want to start, like we said yesterday, with the UK asylum system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, let's just go straight into it. So this is a recent body of work.
Recent, yeah, and ongoing. It kind of started early last year, around September.
Okay.
And then it got interrupted quite a bit in the new year, due to the lockdowns, which was a bit annoying. So
Sure.
It's one of those, like, it had the potential to go bigger in the time that I was completing my degree, but unfortunately, like, a lot of things it had to stop. So yeah, ongoing. Hopefully, more work will come from over the summer.
And so, do you want to give us a slight overview of the project and what it is?
Yeah. So it started with, I guess, a more like personal side of wanting to learn more about a system that was so heavily shown in the media and stuff like that. A lot of the time,
This is the asylum system you're talking about, right?
Yeah, the asylum system, the work with refugee. So at first I wanted to just learn more about a system that was so negatively conveyed in the media. But I wanted to approach it in a way that, because it's not something that has ever personally affected me, nor do I think it ever will, because, like, we're quite lucky to live in this country. I was, like, wary of going into it because I'm from, like, a privileged position. So yeah, I wanted to, like, enter into it without photographing people in the system straight away. So that's when it started to, like, Refugee were a charity in Glasgow, which I found out about them, and so I initially started to, like, volunteer with them, just to try and, like, get a grasp of what was going on in my own city and what was being done to help.
Sure.
And through that, meeting a lot of people, you begin to, like, chat to people in and out of the system, and yeah, it started to, like, pick up a little bit, and I gained confidence in my own knowledge, I guess, as I started to learn more, and then it started to feel like the right thing to start documenting slowly, but still focused on people out with the system, so, like, those within the charity. So I guess I was trying to document it with the hope that it would be informative to people, to still share what was wrong about the system without actually running the risk of showing anyone in a light that wasn't good, if that makes sense.
Right. And so you were mostly shooting people that were working for the charity?
Yeah. It started with just, like, documenting the different packs that were being made and, like, the volunteers around that. But also the idea was to always pair it in context with information about the system. So in the hope that people could still learn, essentially. And it would also give an insight into, like, Glasgow's kind of collective action.
Right. Okay. And is this something that was born out of, because, you know, I've heard a lot about COVID and the issues that sort of, you know, COVID has created for refugees and for asylum seekers, and the way that you know, they're sort of converting hotels into sort of places to essentially house refugees short term, sometimes long term. And I know that COVID has made this infinitely worse. And so is this something that you're wanting to continue? And well, I know you have said that you wanted to continue it, but is this something that you think has changed massively because of COVID? And something that, you know, is there do you have another way of looking at this now because of COVID and what's been happening in the, you know, last year and a half?
Yeah, I think, like, going into this project was, I've only known this in the context of COVID.
Sure.
So like I said at the start, I wasn't focusing on people in the system as such, but as I kind of learned more about it and engaged with more people, I worked closely with Selena and Paula from Refugi, and we put out an open call kind of brief to people that were actually in the forcibly displaced community. As many people know, like, COVID initiated this thing known as hotel detention.
Yeah.
Where people...
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, I think.
Yeah. So people only in the system only receive like just over £5 a day anyway to support themselves. So as well as that being removed, people were put into hotels basically over lockdown with not much support. And yeah, there was loads, even in the accommodation from the government alone, there's been many deaths in the UK. And so that's like a big factor to the project which came later.
Is that because of COVID or just because of negligence?
Well, negligence, yeah. I guess a mix of both. I mean, there was like a horrible thing happened out of that hotel detention, like there was a stabbing in Glasgow, and I guess that's just to do with people coming to the country in a very vulnerable state and are not looked after properly. I think like the policies in place that these people don't get the help and attention they need.
Okay.
And yeah, a lot of the accommodation just isn't fit for like daily like living in.
Sure. And so this project was sort of like, I guess you're in a sense into sort of peering into this a bit more. And do you think you were trying to make a body of work that was sort of socio-political, or was this more just a way of you as a photographer to try and understand something that you hadn't really understood before?
I think initially it started, I didn't want to enter into a project like this without educating myself a little bit first and trying to learn more. But like, it has evolved into a socio-political issue because it is that, like, it's all to do with policy, and the more you learn about that, especially in the UK and Europe as a whole, like the policies aren't there, they're not working, like it's a failing system, and it needs kind of drastic change, and that's not coming around quick enough.
Sure.
So, like, even if one person or whatever, like if people can learn like one thing about the system they didn't know, then I suppose that's like a good thing for me. So yeah, it's kind of tough to answer that. I guess it was personal at the beginning, just to learn more about it, but that's obviously going to lead into like a larger project to try and like
of course
share it with more people.
Well, I think, going from this project, it's quite interesting to move on to where was it? We were talking about it last night. It was a great tangent from this. Was it A's story?
A's story, yeah.
Yeah. So everyone that's watching now, if you guys are on the GSA showcase website, if you scroll all the way down to A's story, we're gonna be talking about that now. So yeah, I'll give you guys a sec. And also, if anyone's got any questions, Josh said that he's happy to take questions as we speak. So we're not necessarily we might do questions at the end, but please do ask your questions in the comments. So yeah. So yeah, I think a good tangent is probably A's story. So why don't you tell us a bit about A's story and how the project got started?
Yeah, so I guess that leads on from what I was just saying about the hotel detention stuff. Refugi saw like a increase in the need for packs, because obviously people were like relocated to these hotels, and all their money was taken away. They couldn't really support themselves, and this is through a winter which in Glasgow can be quite brutal. And so this was like a good few months into the refugee project already that I spoke with Selena, the head, and we had the idea of sending out a kind of open call in English as well as Arabic to basically say to people, like, if they have stories that they want to share somehow through like a photographic form, we'd want to work with them for the project.
So through you, essentially.
Yeah, and we made it so that, because it's quite daunting for a lot of people in the system. Like, they're under quite a lot of stress as it is. So we were very clear about it being like, if people wanted to remain anonymous, they could. And so a story is one story from that so far that has, he got in touch, and he was really keen to speak about his story and his experience, and like share how he got to Glasgow, how he was in a hotel, and what it was like. And he wanted to remain anonymous because of his situation, which if people have read it, they'll understand it. He's in a very, very difficult situation. So it's like...
And is he quite young?
I don't want to say too much, but no, he's not. Sure. He's not a young man. Like, he's not like my age or anything like that.
Sure.
But yeah, this is like super early days, because obviously the refugee work only got started for a little while before lockdown. This happened literally in the last week of before I like had to hand in my work.
Oh really? So you had a week before you hand in, you decided to make a whole new body of work, or at least start one.
It's one of those frustrating things. It was timing, and I had to, this is a project, like, it goes beyond art school, and it will continue to do so. Like, I want to try and do as much justice as I can, and
sure,
like, share it and get stuff out there as much as I can. But so far, there's only been one person that we've actually worked with for, and that was A. So,
and so I'm just looking through the images here, and it looks like you sort of turned it into a small publication. So, I mean, can you tell me about that? Why did you decide to turn it into a publication? Is this like something that you're going to disseminate?
I guess it was to try and contextualize it in some sort. But I like that I was looking a lot at like Arabic text and how it reads completely like in reverse from English. And so the idea of having a book that didn't technically have a front and back cover, it would just have a front English cover and a front Arabic cover. It fitted with this. The man in the publication, he didn't speak much English, and so we were conversing over like Google Translate anyway, and so it felt nice to be able to make an English translation and an Arabic translation, so it was more accessible. And they kind of work together, because you have one going one way and the other the opposite, so you can fit photographs in between that.
Sure.
And so that was more of like, it's a quick test, almost like a draft. I'm not sure what would be the best way to share this in the future. So that will probably change as the project evolves, hopefully.
And these photos in the publication are of him?
Yeah.
So you did meet him physically?
Yeah, I met and I photographed him. I just had to be careful and had to be like respectful of him. But he was like a lovely guy. He was very on board. I think I found it strange because he thanked me quite a lot, literally just for listening, and it kind of, I don't know, I feel like people going through that type of thing, they don't have like a good outlet to let people know, and I think he more just like happy to speak to someone about it.
I think that's a huge issue. I mean, you hear about all the sort of mental health issues with, you know, refugees coming to the UK, for example. And a lot of the time, you know, from what I've read and heard, it's just an issue with people not listening, people not having a platform to talk, and also just not being able to speak the language. I can imagine is extremely difficult. Like you were saying with A, he was using Google Translate.
Yeah, yeah.
And he'd been in the country for quite a while, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, most applications take over 6 months to process, and they have no legal right to work, and so there's not much scope for them to integrate into communities, and then that's how I mean, it's going to cause, I don't want to say segregation because that makes it sound negative, but it's not going to, you know, you're not going to have people learning new languages and meeting new friends and stuff like that in a city if they're being kept in hotels and they can't work and stuff. So, yeah,
of course. Yeah, it must be extremely lonely. I can't imagine. And just looking through here, one of the images actually, now that you're talking about Google Translate, I think you got an image of him using Google Translate to communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite a beautiful image actually. And he's also, is this him on the left writing something down as well?
Yeah, that's him writing some Arabic into my notes.
Okay.
So that was him writing, I think he wrote What's My Fate, which was used as the title of that little book.
Okay. So from here, let's I'd quite like to talk about rebalance.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting because when we had our quick chat yesterday, we were saying how there were some similarities between our work, in the sense that some work I made a few years ago now. Actually, why let's do it this way. Why don't you introduce Rebalance first, and then we can start talking about it? Because I keep forgetting that we've also got, you know, other people watching us, and we need to introduce what we're talking about. So yeah, so let's talk about Rebalance. If anyone's on the GSA Showcase website, we're now talking about Rebalance. If you want to have a look along with us, so yeah, go ahead.
So Rebalance started as a body project, basically. Under normal circumstances in my course, we have a nude body project brief, and it was something that had always interested me, like looking up to other students when I was younger, and so not having it, I just wanted to like make my own brief essentially to try and do it. Again, similar to like the asylum work, it's something I entered into. I was a bit nervous for it because I'm coming from the perspective of like a male photographer, and a lot of the history of photography it's been quite unbalanced in relation to like the male gaze, and women quite objectified often through the use of photography and film and stuff like that. So yeah, it was like I collaborated with my girlfriend Al on this project, which was really fun, and we wanted to just try and like change something about how it would usually occur, like this relationship between the photographer and subject, and we tried to think of ways and how that could be like potentially removed, and so that led on to only using the camera timer when we're photographing ourselves, and so yeah, there'd technically be no one behind the lens. And
sure. So there is no photographer. There is just subject.
Yeah, and we'd both take turns of pressing the shutter and kind of running, and it was quite heavily inspired by Isabel Wenzel's work. She has a great project, Counting Till 10. She only works herself, but her work is great, and it was quite inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way of working. It's something that I've considered for a long time as well. I think, yeah, I mean, I did a very sort of personal project about my father as my degree show work, and I found it incredibly difficult I mean, you know, the project was about our relationship, and I found it incredibly difficult to point a lens at him and sort of portray him the way that I would as a son.
Yeah.
And so for months and months, I was looking for a way of essentially removing myself from that process. So I ended up making these sort of photogrammetry sort of prints where you would have 180 cameras that shot the body all at once. And so essentially you was shooting every angle of the body at once. So that there wasn't this sort of photographer's gaze. So I've always been interested in that kind of thing. And I think it's if anything, it's just a really interesting and important, as a photographer and as an artist, it's just an important exercise, I think, trying to make work without you being behind the camera, or finding a way to do that, I think, and sort of accepting that loss of control and creative control, I think, as well. And the outcome ends up being really fun, I think, too. As you said, like you know, you're doing it with your girlfriend, and you took turns pressing the shutter, well, the timer, and then running back and forth. So it's definitely, I mean, it's a completely different experience to how we used to photographing and how we're taught as well. But I do think, especially with what you're saying with the, you know, especially with like the male gaze in photography, as male photographers, I think it is a really interesting just it's an interesting way of looking at things.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider, like, even just to think
exactly.
about it, because it's easy to forget that you've not had the same relationship and with cameras, I guess, or with anything. And yeah, it was fun because it made it a lot more like collaborative, and it literally it changed it from this thing that was like, I'm aiming this camera at someone else, into you're both working together, and it's quite fun to not know what's going to come out of the photo. You just frame it, and then that's all you work off of.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point too. And it really comes across in these images of you and your girlfriend. It not only feels performative, but it feels incredibly collaborative as well. It feels like you're both working to create the image, and that really comes across in the images, which I think is really beautiful, especially the ones, the black and white ones with the trees.
Oh yeah. They were
There's something really wonderful about those.
Thanks. They were shot in North Yorkshire on like the coldest day ever, so it was quite
Really? And you guys were running around naked?
Yeah, all the shoots were pretty horrible in regards to the weather. We just had to rush them before we froze, but it was fun.
No, that's good. And what's this? There's one of the images which is like a sort of footprints going into a field.
Yeah, so there was some like research I was doing to try and contextualize it a little, but it was focusing on. There's this quote by Engels called "The Great Defeat of the Female Sex," and like Simone de Beauvoir wrote about it, and kind of her take on it, and it was all about this turning point in history when, kind of with like the advent of the plough and stuff like that, when it was this like turn from manual labor to farming and like privatization of land.
Did you say the plough?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite. I'm probably not one to explain this because it's quite a hard read as it is. I don't know even if I understand it all, but it was basically just nodding to some of that stuff to try and contextualize it a little more, and try and have these images of no one to kind of intersperse with the like busy photographs of bodies.
Sure.
And
is this project finished, or is this also an ongoing series?
It's I mean,
you've got a publication out of this, actually, don't you?
Yeah. I made a book from it, which was nice to do. It was nice to like round it off with that. I think something though, like I'd like to do some stuff abroad, and like with nice light and stuff like that. I mean, we were shooting this through winter in the UK, so it'd be nice to like take it forward. Wherever me and my girlfriend go, pretty much, it'd be quite fun to just kind of like keep it as like a little ongoing project between us both.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think we've probably got time for final one, and I'd love to talk about 52 years, if you're up for that.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
For everyone for everyone that's watching, we're now looking at 52 years on the GSA Showcase website, if you want to follow along. So yeah, why don't you sort of introduce the work, Josh, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to make a project every year about my mum. She passed when I was 9 of cancer. So it was something that before studying, it was quite a difficult thing to approach. Like, it was very daunting. So in first year, I like plucked up the courage to try and do it, and it went better than I expected. And like, I learned more about my mum doing it, and so I wanted to keep it up each year, basically. And so this project, the brief was to do with objects that could fit into a hand. And so I had this book, this box, which my dad got me and my brother, of just mum's objects that we could keep that meant something to us. And I wanted to work with them initially. But photographing small objects in like a studio setting, I didn't enjoy that at all. I wanted to work with like the physicality of them a bit more. And so I started to work with the cyanotype process. And as people know, it's like you're working with physical light. And yeah, fast forward a little bit through that project, it just so happened that my mum's birthday would have been coming up, her 52nd birthday. And I thought it was a nice idea to like use light on only that one day to print with. And so yeah, this book was made from it. It's basically like a double-sided cyanotype printed book that could fold into a signature, with some text by myself and all I think there's 7 objects I used from the box. And so yeah, it's only like an edition of one. It's just one book printed on that one day. So.
And so yeah, I mean, there's something really beautiful about this entire book coming to life and being created as something visual through the light of her 52nd birthday. So I mean, I might be putting words into your mouth here, but just looking through it, it almost feels like, you know, the light that has hit these pages, it kind of feels like there's a sort of almost like a presence in a sense.
Yeah.
And you just hearing the way that you talk about this, the entire process feels very meditative, and like I'd like to go back to something that we were talking about last night as well, which is like this sort of importance of, as an artist, sometimes just making work for yourself. Like I know that obviously you've put this on the website, etc., but it is this edition of one, and it's this sort of, to me, it feels like this sort of meditative object that you created throughout an entire day, and that you've made, that you've sort of made for yourself in a sense. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, definitely. It's like I knew that it was quite stressful to make it in one day, because there's 10 pages, I think. No, sorry, there's 5 pages, but they're double-sided. So it was trying to do 10 cyanotype prints in a row on like an overcast day. So it's not technically printed well, but I think it's like an edition of one. And so I only had those few hours to print when the sun was out. But yeah, I think you're right in saying like dealing with personal things through like a creative response can really help. And it can also, like I learn more about my own reaction to it through dealing with it in this way than compared to just like thinking about it, for instance. I
Yeah,
guess like when
absolutely.
people write about things to deal with them or like reflect on things.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like it's nice, kind of like it's interesting you say making it for yourself because like I obviously am, but it's also nice to then share it, um, because like maybe there's other people with things that are difficult for them to confront, um, and so like it might make people consider like dealing with it in a creative as a creative response.
Yeah, I think, the final outcome definitely is interesting to share. But I
Mm.
think what we're both talking about here is sort of the process, right? So the process from the conceptualization of the piece to, your final outcome, that whole process not only becomes a huge part of the piece, but also becomes that sort of healing aspect, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
So, and that process, is yours to keep. It's sort of like this, that's your part of the project. Then you can
yeah,
go and show the work, and you can put it on a website or whatever, but that process, I think, is what is just so important. And I've had that moment as well with making work, very personal work as well, where it's just extremely impressive how healing the process of making personal work can actually be.
yeah, definitely. And I think usually people, you're trying to like consider what other people will think will look good and what will like um, resonate with other people.
Mm.
It's nice to put yourself just at the forefront and do something just because it means a lot to you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so it's quite a nice change to do. That's why with these projects, I've never really. It sounds weird to say, but I wouldn't care as much about what people thought about this because it's so personal. Like it means something to me, and it's
Hmm.
helped me. So it's like a positive from that.
Yeah,
But
and
I'm
also,
just,
I think what you end up with, the final outcome, visually, it's much less important because, as I think we're both agreeing on, the entire point of the piece really is this process. So whatever you end up at the end is just simply, um, it's just the sort of end. It's visually sort of the end goal of the process in a sense, but it's not
yeah,
as important as the process itself. So visually, why would you care about the aesthetics of the work more than you would actually care about that process, just because it's such a different way of making work? And
mm,
yeah, I think it's interesting because I've only made one piece of work like this that's extremely personal. Um, and I also ended up, in that place at the end of it where I didn't worry about the aesthetics of it as much as I usually do, and it was actually quite freeing. And I kind of wish that I could now put myself back in a place where I can continue to work this way, but I can't. I think I just have it. It was just this one-off of this like sort of
yeah, yeah,
emotional process of making this work, and now I'm back to caring about the final aesthetics of work much too, way too much. Um, but yeah, no, really, really beautiful and touching piece of work this, and it's kind of, yeah, it's just really airy and beautiful, and there's also something so wonderful about the, like, the cyanotype blue. There's something, um
mm.
I don't know, there's just something magical about cyanotype, so I feel like
There
it
is, yeah, it is
perfectly
such a unique
complements,
process.
yeah,
Yeah,
perfectly complements the process and this project that you've done. So I think we're kind of coming to an end. I think we're sort of meant to, chat was meant to go on for about 30 to 45 minutes, but like, I'd love to hear some questions from people. I know Laura's asked a question here. She said, "Hi both, and thanks to Josh for sharing this work. Your publications are really interesting. I'm wondering how you approach the mix of images and text within the book format. Thanks."
mm. Um, I guess it's like I will try and contextualize my work before I think about how it will be laid out in a book. Um, I don't know. It's kind of a difficult question. I think it usually comes naturally, like as you sequence, or like if you're doing like an active edit on a wall of like what you're gonna have in the pages. I think it's that thing that just like it will pair naturally and it will feel right. And sometimes you'll need to switch images around. Um, yeah, it's going to depend on the project as well. So for a lot of my projects, I'll have quite specific text for like one image, and so it's it's quite easy to put them on a spread together. Then it just comes down to designing it like half decent. Um, yeah, I'd say it's just about the editing process. Like you just need to work on it and get other people's opinions to see how well it reads.
Is that something you do a lot? Is like through editing process, do you share the work a lot?
Yeah, I mean not this year because I was in my flat, like alone. So this year's not been a good year for that. But usually you'd like have it up on a studio wall, and people would be walking by asking you questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that like secondary look on things. I think you can get sucked in too much and become too critical and focus on things that others might not even notice. So yeah, other people's opinions are like definitely super important when it comes to editing and sequencing.
I mean, that's why COVID has been such a headache for anyone in the creative industry. I think it's been horrible. But hopefully, with that, we're getting there soon. Everyone get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Scales has said, "Thanks for a great convo. What are you both going to be working on over the next while?" Do you want to go first, Josh?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I have some work I shot in Asia like 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5. I feel like I've just lost so much time to COVID, and I'm not. I've like lost track of time from it. But it was before that. I think it was in 2019, and so I want to do some work with that, and I want to get into writing a little bit more, like observational kind of creative writing, and reference to photographs. So hopefully that over the summer.
Yeah, I feel like I'm coming out of my COVID cave slowly. Things are starting up again, thankfully. Just working on some new stuff. Reworking some old projects. I've got a few shows coming up. Hopefully got a show at the end of the year in Berlin. So yeah, just a few interesting things. A lot of stuff is actually just like totally up in the air as it usually is. With COVID, I feel like I don't really want to say anything because the amount of times where I thought I had a show or something and it gets cancelled. So yeah, but possibilities, lots of possibilities, lots of hoping. Fingers crossed. Let's see. C Sharp says, "Love listening in. Any more prints coming soon? I.e. the umbrella one."
Yes, print soon, hopefully.
Where can we find your prints? Are they on your website?
I've not got prints done yet, but I mean anyone that likes a photo is fully welcome to DM me. I'd be very happy to make a print for anyone.
And you've also got some of your publications for sale on the GSA Showcase website now. I'm just looking now. I know that
I think it's Rebalance one for now. I've done
Rebalance. Yeah.
Small run of that, so there's some of them going.
Which is on goodpress.co.uk. So you can find Josh's Rebalance publication on. Let me put this in the comments. goodpress.co.uk. I'm not going to write out the entire thing, but you can do some digging if you want the publication, guys. goodpress.co.uk. All right, I think that's it really. We're right on time. Josh, thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm sorry about the football match again.
That's all right.
Happens. But yeah, thank you so much. It was wonderful to talk to you. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Me too.
And we've got some more of these coming soon. So stay tuned, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for talking to me, mate. Honestly, super, super interesting. And I can't wait to see where, you were saying a lot of this work is going to continue. And please do, like, obviously I follow you now, but please do keep me in the loop. Send me an email whenever.
I will.
You're continuing.
Person soon.
Great. Can't wait to see it. Scales is saying
definitely.
England are putting England out.
I hope so.
All right. Bye, everyone. Nice chat.
Bye. Thank you.